caught between a public health emergency and a struggling economy. Upping the ante, testing at the White House now increased to once a day. A valet who was reportedly not wearing a mask while close to the president has prompted concerns after showing symptoms. Demanding answers, new details about the shooting of an unarmed black man in Georgia, sparking national outrage. Why one prosecutor thought the victim was to blame, and will President Trump weigh in? And anger over masks. The public safety threat as tensions over precautions like face coverings escalate into acts of violence. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. If the country were a storefront, for the most part, the fluorescent lights in the window would read, numbers, they're rising as well. More than 3 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week. So far, roughly 33.5 million have reported losing their jobs in just the last 7 weeks. ABC's Eva Pilgrim leads us off now with a closer look at this economic emergency.
Tonight, lines stretching longer, the food harder to come by, and desperation growing.
I have 3 kids in my house. I have my wife. 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, we've been waiting for some food. We don't get nothing.
More than 33 million Americans now out of work. In New York, lines snaking through the streets. At this Brooklyn food pantry, organizers seeing people facing painful dilemmas.
Your choice is, do I pay my rent? Do I pay my bills? Do I feed my children?
9 million children 12 and under are now not getting enough food, according to a new survey released by the Brookings Institution.
Way more empty shelves.
With so many in need, this Salvation Army in Fort Lauderdale nearly running out of food. Hundreds lining up before dawn in North Carolina. Yoon Marshall is a taxi driver. She's been out of work for weeks and is just trying to feed her 10-year-old son.
I do really need help. My bank account is getting negative. I basically run out of options.
David pressing the president about the very real possibility of 19% unemployment.
Let me ask you about the tremendous hurt in this country. There are 30 million Americans who are unemployed. You don't need me to tell you that. We're expecting the new unemployment rate this week. There have been forecasts 15, 16, 17%. One of your advisors projected an unemployment rate of 19%. That's nearly 1 in 5 Americans without a job. How bad is this going to get?
Well, that is what it is. And, you know, it's very interesting. Even the Democrats aren't blaming me for that. We had to close it up, and we saved millions of lives, and we did the right thing. Now we're getting back to work.
And Eva joins us now with more. Eva, even amid these historic jobless numbers, so many Americans are still having trouble getting those stimulus checks and unemployment benefits, right?
That's right, Lindsay. Up to 10 million people could still be waiting on those stimulus checks. And as for that extra $600 a week in unemployment, the system is so overwhelmed by new claims. We're hearing from many people they have yet to see any unemployment benefits.
Wow.
Lindsay.
Okay. Eva Pilgrim, thanks so much for that report. And joining us now, Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. Thanks so much for joining us, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
As you know firsthand, leaders across the country are making difficult decisions about when and how to reopen. The governors of Virginia and Maryland are now moving toward establishing a date to reopen. But just yesterday, you said that you were not ready for that yet. When do you think the right time might be for D.C.? And are you all at all concerned that your colleagues in Maryland and Virginia may be acting too quickly?
Well, we've established early on that we were looking to the public health criteria that we know will keep our city safe, having sustained decreases in our level of infection, making sure our hospitals are ready for a surge, making sure that our businesses, when they open, can supply appropriate PPE and guidelines to keep people safe. And what we know, we're in the National Capital Region, and in both Maryland and Virginia, cases continue to rise. So what we have to be focused on as a region, as economies open up, that we can handle increasing levels of infection in our region.
And there were some models about a month ago that suggested that the surge may happen in D.C. around June. Is that still the timetable that you're looking at?
Actually, we think that we're going to experience our surge in cases in May, and that we will see a surge in hospitalizations to follow. We've been very focused on, and our residents have made a tremendous amount of sacrifice to put us in this position. Our early models actually had us having many more thousand cases than we have right now. But we still need to make sure that we're containing the spread of the virus. And we're very focused on people listening to their bodies, paying attention to their symptoms, and getting tested. And if they have a positive test, that they're isolating in their home, away from roommates, away from family, so they're not spreading the virus.
Of course, African Americans are being disproportionately affected by COVID-19, and D.C. is no exception. Blacks represent more than 2 times the cases of any other demographic. There are 79% of the 285 deaths in Washington, D.C. were African American. So what's being done specifically for African Americans right now, who are often on the front lines of essential workers?
Absolutely. We're very focused on making sure that people get tested. And we are also very focused on our vulnerable populations that also have other conditions that make them very susceptible to complications and death related to COVID-19. We're actually doing a very targeted outreach to people that we've identified in the city that fall into those categories. But looking forward, one of our Reopen DC advisory committees is focused on disparity, is focused on how we eliminate those disparities as we reopen and move forward. And we're looking forward to those recommendations. So when we reopen, we are locally, but also nationally committed to the building blocks of health that will prevent the African Americans being so disproportionately subject to this virus.
And Mayor, you also have the title of mother and have a nearly 2-year-old daughter. From a personal standpoint, how are you juggling your responsibilities as a mom with your responsibilities as mayor? Any advice for single parents out there who are also dealing with this difficult balancing act?
Well, thank you for asking. And my daughter will have her second birthday just in a couple of weeks. And I'm very blessed. I have a great team of people. I have great support at home, great support at the office, and a delightful child who I actually get to spend every evening with now because there are no evening events. So we're managing. I'm no different than any other family trying to make it work. And I think that parents have been focused on homeschooling and also working from home while not having all of the great events and other things that kids like to do, like go to the playground. So how we get our kids back to normal is really one of my big focus areas. Certainly getting the economy moving is on the top of my list, but making sure that kids can get back to normal activities because when they get back to normal activities, we're really back because parents can get back to work in the way that they're accustomed to working. And so putting our kids at the top of our list is what we're doing in D.C.
And lastly, in an interview with the New York Post this week, when asked about the prospect of D.C. becoming a state, President Trump said, quote, "Why? So we can have 2 more Democratic senators and 5 more congressmen? That'll never happen." What's your response to that?
Well, we're glad that the president made plain his argument against D.C. statehood is not about the Constitution. It's not about if D.C. can govern itself. It's about raw politics to him. And we've made that case, and we made it very forcefully in a recent hearing at the United States Congress. And we're going to continue to make it. This pandemic has shown a bright light on what it means not to have 2 senators for Washington, D.C. We're always treated like a state when it comes to federal funding. Our residents pay federal taxes more than 22 states. We're larger than 2 states. And we pay more to the federal government than we get back. And so in this pandemic response, they actually shorted us $250 million by calling us a territory. So we know that we have to get that fixed. And the only reason we could be treated that way is because we don't have two senators speaking for us. And that's why D.C. statehood is so important. It is not prohibited by the Constitution. We have a bill in the Congress, and a simple majority vote in the Congress will make us the 51st state, just like has happened for every state outside of the original 13 colonies.
Mayor Bowser, thank you so much for your time. We'll let you get back to that little girl.
Thank you.
And now to that news from the White House today. A member of the Navy who serves as a valet to the president serves him his meals. He's tested positive for the coronavirus. The White House says that the president and vice president have been tested again, and the results were negative. But new protocols will now be put in place. ABC News Chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl has the latest.
A coronavirus scare for the president. For the first time, somebody who has been with him in the Oval Office has tested positive.
Did it spook him?
Yeah, it's a little bit strange, but it's one of those things.
It's one of the president's personal valets who tested positive, a military service member on the team that serves his lunch and Diet Cokes in the Oval Office.
I've had very little personal contact with this gentleman. Know who he is, good person, but I've had very little contact.
But the president revealed he is now going to be tested for coronavirus every day.
No matter what you do, testing is not a perfect art. So we test once a week. Now we're going to go testing once a day.
While there will be testing every day at the White House, testing capacity for the rest of the country is still short of where most experts say it needs to be for people to get back to work safely. Just yesterday, the White House press secretary dismissed the idea of making tests available for all.
So the notion that everyone needs to be tested is just simply nonsensical. The people who need to be tested are vulnerable populations.
Today, the president was asked if he is concerned that many states are moving forward with plans to partially reopen, even though they have not met the White House's guidelines for reopening.
We give leeway to the governors, and these are governors that have done a good job. We rely on them, we trust them, and hopefully they're making the right decisions.
The president met today with the governor of Texas, who is reopening his state, even though the number of cases there are on the rise.
We created these surge forces that will go out to regions where there are flare-ups. It's like putting out a fire.
As the president urges states to reopen, the CDC has prepared a draft roadmap to help restaurants, schools, churches, and others to do it safely. But today we learned the White House has rejected that draft. A senior official telling ABC News it is, quote, unnecessary and duplicative.
And Jonathan Karl joins us now. And John, beyond that daily testing, what about the use of masks in the White House? I mean, the president has avoided wearing one publicly, but are others inside the West Wing wearing them? What are you seeing there?
Well, I'll tell you first what the president said, because he was asked directly if his valet had been wearing a mask, and he answered by saying that his valets are wearing masks, do wear masks, and will be wearing masks. But I have to tell you, Lindsay, I have been in and out of the White House regularly throughout this crisis, and I have almost never seen any member of the White House staff wearing a mask in the West Wing.
And on the issue of states reopening, are states following those guidelines of phases to reopen that the task force announced last month, or is this a bit of a free-for-all?
Well, I don't know if I would quite call it a free-for-all, but no, the states have not met the guidelines. You know, if you remember the guidelines that were put out by the White House with some fanfare, you know, with the president right there, the vice president, the coronavirus task force, called for a series of phases. And before you got to each phase, a state was supposed to see the number of cases go down for 14 days and several other markers. And as far as I can tell, none of the states that are now going forward with reopening plans have actually hit all of those markers to enter phase one, and yet we see 39 different states beginning to open up to some degree, clearly not reaching all of the markers in the White House task force guidelines.
Yeah, and some of them still increasing the number of cases. Yes. All right, Jonathan Karl, thanks so much. And we turn now to new developments in the fatal shooting of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery, an unarmed black man who was out for a jog. Ahmaud would have been 26 years old tomorrow. In his honor, Runner's World is planning a virtual run, #IRunWithMaud. There are still no arrests or charges against the two white suspects. And now a letter that's raising eyebrows, written by a prosecutor who's now off the case, why he thought the killing was justified. ABC's Steve Osunsami has the latest.
State investigators tonight who've taken over this case are going over this cell phone video frame by frame, looking at the last moments of Ahmaud Arbery's life. The 25-year-old is seen jogging through a neighborhood near his home when he runs into this white pickup truck. The two men waiting for him with their guns told police that they believed he was the same person seen on security cameras breaking into homes and had chased him here.
There's a black male running down the street.
They claim that they were trying to make a citizen's arrest. You see and hear the violent end. Police say the gunmen are Travis McMichael and his father, Gregory, a former police officer and a former investigator for a county prosecutor. Neither have been charged tonight.
I think that no arrest has been made basically because because of the title that he carried of the retired police officer.
Because of their apparent connections to the father and son, two prosecutors have recused themselves from the case. And in this newly uncovered letter, one of them, who has seen this same video, says he sees it differently, that Arbery initiated the fight, grabbed the shotgun, and under Georgia law, McMichael was allowed to use deadly force to protect himself. He blames the man who died, saying that his aggressive nature led him to attack an armed man. He also writes that it was perfectly legal to chase down Arbery in the first place because they thought he was a burglar. They carried their guns in the open and, quote, it appears their intent was to stop and hold this criminal suspect until law enforcement arrived. Attorneys for the family's victim strongly disagree.
The important reason why it could not be a citizen's arrest is that under that statute, a citizen would actually have to observe a crime taking place. Ahmaud Arbery has only observed running down the road.
Outrage continues across the country and online with the hashtag Justice for Ahmaud Arbery. We also heard from 2020 presidential candidate Joe Biden today.
Many of us have seen that harrowing footage of Ahmaud Arbery and out on a jog in a beautiful day in February in Florida and in Georgia, shot down in cold blood, a sense lynched before our very eyes, 2020 style. And his family and the country deserves justice, and they deserve it now.
And President Trump says he's expecting a full briefing on the case tonight.
My heart goes out to the parents and to the loved ones of the young gentleman. It's a very sad thing, but I will be given a full report this evening.
Haven't seen the video yet, to be clear.
No, I haven't.
Let's bring in Steve Osunsami now with more. Steve, with all the public outcry over this case, are authorities any closer to an arrest?
At this point, it doesn't appear so. They're not really showing their cards, but we are seeing that investigators are interviewing people. They're actually doing their work. It's entirely possible in the next few weeks we could see state law enforcement authorities who are now leading, who have taken over this investigation, issuing some charges in this case.
And Steve, tell us more about the claim that the father and son were simply trying to defend themselves.
So they tell us that, they tell police that they were actually trying to stop this young man because they believe he was the person breaking into their properties, and that they say that when they encountered him, they were trying to make this citizen's arrest, and that he fought with them, and that at one point he was fighting with the son with the gun, and that's when they fired and killed him in the middle of this arrest, that he fought back.
But just to be clear, in order to make a citizen's arrest, you have to actually witness a crime.
That's right, Lindsay. The lawyers for the victim's family say that to arrest someone under a citizen's arrest, you have to have proof, probable cause that this person committed a crime. And they say that he had nothing to do with any crime, any break-in, and didn't even know any of these people when he was killed. Lindsay?
Steve Osunsami, thanks so much for that report. And now to a stunning decision by the Department of Justice to drop criminal charges against Michael Flynn, President Trump's former national security advisor, who had pleaded guilty to lying about his contact with the Russian ambassador. Why Trump now sees this as vindication. ABC's Pierre Thomas has those details.
Tonight, the Department of Justice announcing a bombshell, seeking to drop the case against Michael Flynn. It was 29 months ago he left the courthouse in shame after pleading guilty to lying to the FBI. The day after that plea, the president tweeting he dismissed his national security advisor because he lied to the vice president.
I fired him because of what he said to Mike Pence. Very simple.
Flynn's guilty plea centered around lying about his contact with then Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak. But today, the Justice Department concluded that Flynn's prosecution was unjustified and that his statements were not material to any viable counterintelligence investigation concerning the Russians. Today, the president praising Flynn as a hero.
He was an innocent man. He is a great gentleman.
Then the president directed his fire at the FBI for an investigation into Russian interference that he believes should never have been started.
They're dishonest, crooked people. They're scum, and I say it a lot. They're scum. They're human scum.
But tonight, we've not heard from FBI officials who have been adamant that lying to them compromises the entire criminal justice system.
For more now, let's bring in Pierre Thomas. Pierre, this is not yet a done deal, right? The Justice Department still needs a judge to sign off dismissing the charges?
Lindsay, we're unsure how the judge in the case is going to react. In the past, he's been very critical of Flynn. Lindsay?
All right, Pierre Thomas for us. Thank you. When we come back, the fight to reopen, a closer look at the sometimes violent pushback against safety measures designed to stop the spread of COVID-19. Plus, as the popularity of apps like Zoom explode, we're getting disturbing new reports that they're turning into platforms for hate, the problem and what's being done to get it under control. And with many schools closed for the rest of the academic year, one school in Montana, they're welcoming students back, how they're trying to keep kids safe using something normally found in a swimming pool.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis, 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, nice to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, sunshine. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, I'm grateful you woke up this morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. We've been waiting for you. Say good morning. Good morning, sunshine. In America. Say good morning. I want you to wake me up.
Another week in America, a country facing a new test now.
The Wuhan airport, almost no one here.
The last flight out of Rome.
This is the nursing home just outside Seattle. Dozens of people were just rushed off this cruise ship.
This is ground zero. It is shut down.
Another ambulance just pulled out.
Now they're headed to the hospital.
Time is of the essence.
You can see the ship behind me.
This is the first time tests have been done here.
Morning, afternoon, evening, late night, 24/7. ABC News. There for you. Right now, how do you make sense of it all? Now, afternoons on ABC. One place with the good information you need.
We are all in this together, and we're going to get through this together.
Pandemic. What you need to know. Afternoons at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC.
This video of a busy American Airlines flight is gaining attention tonight. The passenger who snapped, saying that the flight from New York to North Carolina was too crowded. American Airlines responded on Twitter, calling the video concerning, but said the flight was not full and it was limiting the number of passengers on each flight. Starting next week, American Airlines will also require all passengers to wear masks. As mask rules and other public restrictions have quickly become a big part of daily life, it's not always a smooth transition. You're about to see a handful of incidents where authorities say that policies and guidelines have caused some to act out in extreme ways. Our Alex Perez reports.
Violent outbreaks taking center stage across parts of the U.S. as many revolt against the safety measures some areas have enacted to help stop the spread of coronavirus. At this McDonald's in Oklahoma City, 3 employees were shot when authorities say customer Glorisha Woody became infuriated when she was told the dining room was closed and she could not eat in the restaurant. Authorities say a fight broke out and Woody, who's been arrested, allegedly returned with a handgun and opened fire. On Good Morning America, the CEO of McDonald's defended the employees for following the rules.
There's absolutely no excuse for violence, particularly gun violence, so I'm just happy that our people are going to be okay.
Woody reportedly denies the account. In Flint, Michigan, security guard Calvin Munnerlin was shot, authorities say, by a member of a family inside a dollar store who was angered after the guard told them their daughter is required to wear a mask to be in the store. The family returned, and police say one of them opened fire, killing Munnerlin.
When I found out what had happened to him, it really broke my heart because I know what kind of person he was.
Those suspects now under arrest, facing murder charges, and reports of angry residents on the rise. In Holly, Michigan, the 68-year-old man was arrested and charged after authorities say he was captured on Dollar Tree store surveillance camera, wiping his nose and face on an employee's sleeve after he was asked to wear a mask. The public pressure and backlash causing some government officials to backtrack. Ohio's governor saying his initial order requiring face masks while shopping went, quote, too far. Now it's a recommendation, but not required.
It became clear to me that that was just a bridge too far, that people were not going to accept the government telling them what to do.
And in Stillwater, Oklahoma, the city amending its face mask policy after just 3 hours, citing threats of violence against store employees trying to enforce the measure.
And Lindsay, making matters worse, in some jurisdictions, law enforcement has said they will be taking a soft approach towards enforcing some of those recommended safety measures. The big concern is that some of these violent incidents could keep growing. Lindsay?
Alex, coming up next, the stark divide between Wall Street and Main Street. A look at why the stock market continues to jump higher as millions of Americans lose their jobs. Plus, it was only a matter of time behind the newest trend sweeping the country, face mask fashion. But first, our tweet of the day. Happy anniversary to one of the biggest shots in Michael Jordan's career.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him? I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange. Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Whew. Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. No bull, no spin. Now, imagine getting your news like that. Just give it to me straight. ABC News, straightforward.
Another week in America, a country facing a new test now.
The Wuhan airport, almost no one here.
The last flight out of Rome.
This is the nursing home just outside Seattle. Dozens of people were just rushed off this cruise ship.
This is ground zero.
It is shut down.
Another ambulance just pulled out.
Now they're headed to the hospital.
Time is of the essence.
You can see the ship behind me.
This is the first time tests have been done here.
Morning, afternoon, evening, late night, 24/7. ABC News, there for for you.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
Welcome back. As we reported at the top of the program, it was another tough day of news on those unemployment numbers. And the divide between Main Street and Wall Street may be as wide as ever. Let's take a look by the numbers. Another 3.2 million Americans applied for unemployment last week, meaning more than 33 million have filed jobless claims in the past 7 weeks of this pandemic. It comes on the heels of that payroll report which estimated that more than 20 million private sector workers lost their jobs in April, the worst loss on record since the ADP report began. And some estimates say the unemployment rate could shoot up to 16% or higher in tomorrow's monthly jobs report. Time magazine is calling it the Great Reckoning, as we could see an unemployment rate not seen since the Great Depression. But despite the economic gloom, the Dow Jones was up more than 200 points today. The stock market seeing signs of hope in states beginning to reopen their economies and rising oil prices. And the tech-heavy NASDAQ gained 125 points today and is now positive for the year for the first time since the pandemic caused stocks to plummet in March. The new cover of The Economist may say it best, a dangerous gap, the markets versus the real economy. Still ahead, the Texas salon owner who defied quarantine and ended up in jail. The update on her case. Plus, school's out for summer for nearly every child in America. But tonight, we're going back to school in the small town that's decided class is in session. And express yourself from classic to outrageous. How fashionistas are making face masks all their own. Plus, a look at the headlines trending right now online.
Seeing right now, this is part of the eye wall. This procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
This fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
To the right, guys.
So this is the 4th weekend of protest.
Watch ABC News on location for Facebook Watch.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, nice to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to the doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals,
and first responders.
Thank you to everyone keeping our supermarkets, pharmacies, gas stations running.
Thank you to all the essential workers for all that you do.
Thank you.
We thank you.
We thank you. We thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For all you do.
And with every challenge, question, concern, we'll be here for you every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Because we will
get through this together.
As the country slowly begins to reopen, new unemployment numbers released today show an additional 3.2 million Americans filed for unemployment last week, bringing the total number of jobless claims in the last 7 weeks to more than 33 million.
And
I'm just like trying to survive this.
By this weekend, more than 43 states will have lifted some restrictions, even as the number of coronavirus cases continues to rise in at least 19 of them.
We're very confident governors are moving in a responsible way.
An expert from Johns Hopkins testifying that no state has yet met all the White House's own criteria to reopen.
We must prioritize the strengthening of capacities in diagnostic testing, contact tracing, and the health system.
The Justice Department moving to dismiss its criminal case against President Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, who pleaded guilty to lying to investigators about the nature of his contacts with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak back in 2016. The charges against Flynn were brought by former special counsel.
And now to a growing concern as the use of video conferencing has exploded in popularity since the COVID-19 outbreak began. Virtual meeting hosts like Zoom, they've undergone skyrocketing growth, with user bases going from the millions to hundreds of millions in a matter of months. But it's also become a new weapon for hate-filled attacks. Earlier today, the New York State Attorney General announced that as part of a settlement, Zoom would crack down on so-called Zoom bombing and prevent these often racist attacks. Our Kira Phillips has more on what it's like to find yourself Zoom bombed and what's being done to stop it.
They all had something to celebrate, and they were all using Zoom to do it. Until that joy was hijacked. In early April, two-time Olympic fencer Nzinga Prescott was calling in to celebrate Team USA fencing with her teammates. That's when she saw the racist chats. New York Rangers prospect Keandre Miller was hosting a special chat to engage his NHL fans through this pandemic period of no sports. Then came the vulgar insults.
Okay, I'm ready when you're ready.
Dennis Johnson's video conference was to proudly defend his doctoral dissertation about the struggles of African Americans in California's education system. Then the racist profanity and pornographic images appeared.
So again, increasing the school of prison pipeline and also the special education pipeline.
And then there's Reverend Joe Amico. He was celebrating Easter month by opening up his Sunday sermons on Zoom.
Today, we're celebrating Holy Humor Sunday.
Until this video conference was interrupted by hate speech.
Those apart, man. Those, man. We're getting bombed.
And this disturbing video of a KKK cross burning.
I heard my intern and say, "We're being bombed," and then heard a lot of the noise and distraction. And then the person who hosts our Zoom service said, "I have to shut it down."
Reverend Amico was actually being Zoom bombed, the new form of harassment popping up in pandemic times where intruders hijack video calls, many of these attacks involving hate speech and racist images. His Progressive Tabernacle Congregational Church in Salem, Massachusetts, had an egregious Zoom bomb launched right at it.
You know, Reverend, your church is all about diversity and unity. You accept everyone. When this happened, how did that impact you, not only as a reverend, but just as a human being?
It's unfortunate that folks would do that kind of thing. Because it is hurtful, it is hateful, it was scary for some folks. But again, the other side of that is that we continue on because nothing can separate us from the love of God, and we'll continue to worship who we are.
Zoom bombing, as it has now been defined, is a phenomenon so alarming that the FBI issued this warning on April 1st nationwide after the FBI's Boston division warned about the problem back in March. According to the FBI statement, the FBI has received multiple reports of conferences being disrupted by pornographic and/or hate images and threatening language. As individuals continue the transition to online lessons and meetings, the FBI recommends exercising due diligence and caution in your cybersecurity efforts.
Were you prepared for that?
No, we were not. These meeting disruptions are devastating. They're appalling.
So now, Zoom forced to face hate head on, telling ABC News they are now working with the FBI and other law enforcement to help bring those online predators to justice.
So you are definitely confirming here that you are working with the FBI and law enforcement to go after these individuals that are infiltrating these calls and spewing hate.
Yes, and we have worked with them to ensure that as needed, we can cooperate.
Pelosi also telling us, following the rise in Zoom bombing, the company has created new default settings to make meetings more secure, including requiring a password for participants to join a call, and a new reporting feature so an intruder can be identified immediately.
I want to focus on how we can prevent it from happening again.
Efforts. Nzinga Prescott, the most decorated black female fencer in U.S. fencing history, wishes she would have had before having to read these explicit and racially degrading comments during this video conference with her Olympic teammates.
I know it's difficult for you to talk about, but how bad did it get?
The person said the N-word repeatedly, and then it was so publicly, it was so disrespectful. And with all of my contributions to the sport, representing my country, I've sacrificed my body for this sport. And so it was really upsetting to see those words attacking me in this space of where I belong to be.
Exactly why groups like Color of Change are fighting to protect those spaces.
Zoom needs to take it seriously because it's not simply about our ability to just come together. It's also about our ability to earn a living. It's about our ability to take care of our families. Having spaces where we can continue to do the meaningful work free of harassment and abuse is a civil rights issue.
And Kira Phillips joins us now. Kira, these so-called Zoom bombers, how do they even find these Zoom meetings?
Yeah, these Zoom bombers, Zoom intruders, as they are now called, they actually search out and find new Zoom meetings, Lindsay. They track leaders of organizations and people who gather around social justice issues like on Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms, and then they develop strategies to go in and Zoom bomb.
And we also heard in your report that Zoom is teaming up with law enforcement to try and prevent these sort of attacks. But what kind of steps can we take on our own to protect ourselves?
Well, what they told us is keep the default settings in place. Also, use a password and the waiting room function for any Zoom meetings. You can also lock the room once your event starts to prevent anyone else from getting access. And also, you can now remove participants from meetings, and once they're removed, they're no longer able to re-enter.
Some helpful tips there. Thanks so much, Kira. As we grapple with problems with the nation's food supply, two of the largest meat processing plants are coming back online. The Smithfield food plant in South Dakota is reopening with new safety measures, including barriers between workstations. The plant closed about 3 weeks ago after reports of more than 800 cases. Tyson will also reopen its largest plant in Iowa that had been closed because of COVID-19. This all comes as production of beef and pork fall nationwide, and prices for meat continue to go up. And as meat prices start to rise, many people are considering alternatives. With more on that, let's bring in ABC's Rebecca Jarvis. And Rebecca, you talked about how this crisis might impact consumer spending with one CEO who could certainly stand to benefit.
That's right, Lindsay. I spoke with Ethan Brown. He's the founder and CEO of Beyond Meat. And people are shifting their habits. As we've seen meat prices going up, people have shifted their habits. We're seeing increases in seafood consumption, but we're also seeing increases in the consumption of products like Beyond Meat, which are meat alternatives. Take a listen.
Beef prices were up 8% just last week in grocery stores. I wonder if there will ever come a day where Beyond Meat, that burger, is going to be less expensive in a grocery store than a beef burger.
If you look at the price of beef, for example, where it's doubled in the last month, we have an opportunity to lean forward, to hold our breath a little bit, and to offer aggressive pricing to be closer in terms of the price point.
Is it something that we could actually see this year?
It depends on where the price of beef continues to go, but overall what you'll see from Beyond Meat is us continuing to be very aggressive on pricing throughout the summer to try to grow that market share.
And Lindsay, this is something you oftentimes see in downturns. It's something we saw in 2008 and 2009. There are clearly losers, but there are also winners, and there are shifting tastes and habits. As the price of various things go up, Americans look for alternatives, and they're finding one here. It still has yet to become the same price or the equivalent price of beef or other meat products, so that remains to be seen truly whether it's a competitor, but we are seeing those shifting tastes in quarantine.
And Rebecca, companies like Beyond Meat, they seem to be well positioned, certainly during the pandemic. What are some other new jobs that could come from this crisis?
Well, I think what's really important for people to remember out there, while we've seen the losses in the restaurant industry, the hotels, the retail industry, many of those workers might not go back to jobs in those particular industries. There are a lot of opportunities in digital, in programming, and while that might sound completely far afield from where you are right now, there are a number of programs through the Department of Labor, through a number of companies who are hiring right now, Lindsay, for those digital jobs, and they say you don't need a 4-year degree to apply, so now would be a really smart time to reskill yourself. The Brookings Institute says that they believe that a number of employers will upskill the workforce, and that is good news for people who are looking for a new job and something that could even offer them more money in the long run.
Yeah, bright spot there. Okay, Rebecca Jarvis, thanks so much. Classes canceled for more than 300 million children around the world right now. Homeschooling is the only option for so many families who are strapped for time, technology, and resources. But in one small town in Montana, school is back in session, and it looks a little different now. Tonight, Clayton Sandell shows us how one small district is trying out social distancing.
For the first time since a global pandemic shut down every school in Montana, a few are now welcoming students back.
It's lightweight, it's easy, and the kids understand it.
Lesson number 1 is literally using your noodle for social distancing.
It's just such an easy tool to know that that's more than 6 feet.
Every desk here is isolated. Kindergartners get their own crayons so they don't have to share. There's even a system for bathrooms.
If you go in to use the restroom, you put it in the middle.
For nearly all of Montana's 147,000 students, school is still canceled. But Willow Creek, with just 57 students, is one of a handful of schools bucking the trend and the advice of many health experts.
We surveyed the parents, and 76% of the students would be coming back to school. They were excited about it.
The school says it's tried remote learning. Sometimes it works.
Our internet is in and out because of the wind.
Sometimes not.
We do see that the kids are not getting what they need. They need their teachers. They need that instruction.
Willow Creek believes fewer kids plus a large building equals more space for social distancing.
There is no way bigger schools can open. They don't have the space.
But science teacher Joyce Palastro admits having second thoughts.
I think everyone's a little anxious about the whole idea that the virus there's a lot unknown.
Montana has one of the lowest infection rates in the country, but the union representing the state's teachers worries about a new spike in cases.
They made a bad decision. I just hope their bad decision doesn't lead to an unfortunate result.
Do you worry that you might actually be contributing to the spread?
I don't believe they're going to spread it. I think that when they come in, there's precautions taken as soon as they come through the door.
For now, many parents here are on board.
All along, I believe the children should have been in school.
Getting a glimpse at a new normal and a possible future for schools everywhere. Clayton Sandell, ABC News, Willow Creek, Montana.
Thanks to Clayton for that. It's still ahead on ABC News Live. Golf, it's back. Greens are open almost everywhere, but if watching sports is more your thing, we've got news on that too. Plus, they are the must-have accessory. Meet the designers making masks not just functional, but fashionable and supporting our frontline heroes at the same time.
Right now, how do you make sense of it all? Now, afternoons on ABC, one place with the good information you need.
We are all in this together, and we're going to get through this together.
Pandemic, what you need to know. Afternoons at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC.
We know coronavirus has affected so many of you.
America has changed for now. There's no question about that.
People are finding a way to come together.
What else should people know about how to care for their families through this?
And you feel it's not too late to flatten the curve?
It's not too late.
When do we expect to have a vaccine?
George, we are all thinking of you, Allie, and the kids.
How are you feeling?
I feel fine, Robin. She wanted to share this message.
You know I'm feverish if I'm on national television with no makeup on.
Allie is now on the Roberts family prayer chain. Robin, how you doing? I'm loving this. Gonna keep these slippers on.
We are so grateful that we get to do this from home.
I'm going to take the camera and turn it around. Kelly was doing prompter.
You do know you're sideways, right?
It's great to see so many Americans stepping up.
All in this together.
The world coming together as one.
We're going to get through this together.
Right here with you on Good Morning America.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner of 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards, including the most prestigious honor, Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news choice.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you. ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, I'm grateful you woke up this morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. We've been waiting for you. Say good morning. Good morning, sunshine. America. Say good morning. I want you to wake me up.
ABC News, America's #1 news source. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
Americans clamoring to get outside and back to normal. They now have at least one activity in nearly every state. Golf is back in 49 states. The lone holdout, New Hampshire. And for those of you anxious for sports to be back on TV, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning, they're all expected to hit the course in front of the cameras. They'll be part of a celebrity tournament that's televised live. It'll benefit COVID-19 relief. No date set for that match just yet. Earlier this week, the Met Gala, which may just be the biggest red carpet event in New York City, it went virtual. Fashion is still finding its place in the midst of this crisis, and for many, the face mask, it's not just a way to protect themselves, it's also a way to express themselves.
Once again, art imitates life.
It spells love.
A wall of face masks sent from the far corners of the United States to New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo, a unique symbol of safety.
And this is just people's way of saying we care and we want to help.
Face masks are now 2020's wardrobe staple, the first must-have accessory recommended by the CDC, an intersection where fashion meets function.
I say it's high time we catch this killer, because we got more living to do.
In the effort to keep hospital-grade PPE reserved for those on the front line, Matthew McConaughey posted one of the many DIY tutorials for making masks.
Grab a hold, and you're good to go.
Functional for sure, but flattering? Well, that's where the experts come in.
As I said, we can do this. We have the machines. We have the facilities, we have everything.
Designer Michael Costello is no stranger to a challenge. His designs, often spotted on A-list celebrities, now adorn the faces of our frontline heroes.
We just want to say thank you for helping healthcare workers.
Inspired by designer Christian Siriano's call to make masks for those essential workers, Michael began the Million Mask Challenge.
It gave me hope again. And we inspired so many designers.
Harnessing his vast connections, Michael's already dispatched hundreds of thousands of masks, and he's also giving the public some options too.
So it stretches really, really, really well. Like this one is a neoprene scuba blend. And when you're tired, I mean, you're good to go.
Even though COVID's happening right now, I'm still going to be fashionable. I'm not going to let it get me down.
In this time of crisis, designers are trying to lift our collective spirits with an explosion of creativity. Show-stopping options for those runs to the grocery store. Excess dress material, now part of a complete summer ensemble. With avant-garde transformed into wearable art. Some ready to wear, others glamorous.
We want to define our face. We do it with what? Makeup, with jewelry. Well, now masks are going to be a part of our proclamation and our sense of style.
Looking for water resistant? Check.
There's a lot of these masks that are made out of paper, out of cloth, and they need an extra protection.
Brooklyn-based designer Griselle Lopez realized her specialty in PVC could be used to help protect PPE underneath. Some of her designs harken back to the 1918 flu.
I incorporated flowers inside of the masks and the hats and sage.
In the world of fast fashion, sustainability may be the new trend.
We're going to be seeing a lot of upcycling.
Fashion brand Kess seems to agree. Vogue declared it the mask to wear. The biodegradable, washable option features are now largely embraced as consumers continue tightening their belts. The face mask is actually old hat in the fashion world. Just ask Candice Cuoco.
I wanted to create this very strong mask look, and so I just started draping a mask over my face with leather.
Candice first debuted these designs for New York Fashion Week back in 2017, reviving these creations of satin and leather by popular demand.
We have these really beautiful garters that normally would be on stockings. So when you put it on, yes, we're covering our face, but it still makes me feel sexy and strong.
For Candice, it's more than fashion, it's personal.
It needs to be functional. Like my daughter, she has a compromised immune system, so we're very, very careful with certain things.
Her father works on bridges, which led her to create a second company, Steel Gorillas, specializing in PPE.
Our first customer was the state of California, Caltrans.
Shipping out millions of units.
I don't know if I've ever been on the phone as much as I have been in the past 2 months.
Mega brands like our parent company, Disney, now joining in the movement, harnessing that signature touch to its mask designs. The Universal Music Group is doing the same with masks of music superstars. While the arenas are closed, showing off love for your favorite basketball team is still in season. While high-end storefronts remain boarded up, brands like Louis Vuitton are still busy, churning out unbranded PPE for those on the front line. Famed upscale malls like Miami's Lincoln Road remain deserted, but a peek inside the windows suggests a new sense of luxury could soon become the norm.
Now, maybe the accessories will always be a little bit more off the runway and a little more cutting edge. But I think people are really, it's an introspective time, and I think we're trying to minimize our waste. We're trying to, gravitate towards a philosophy of where less is more.
As for the famed red carpets and who's wearing what?
I wish Joan Rivers was still around for this so that we can watch an episode of Fashion Police and hear how Joan Rivers would be like, oh my God, did you see what she had on her face? I don't know if it was a mask or if it was a sausage, but whatever it is, I'm living for it. Best dress goes to Oscar Mayer for their face mask.
While it's still unclear just how long this latest trend will last, many are hopeful that in the near future, these face masks will be relegated to pieces of fashion history. And before we go tonight, the image of the day from Illinois. Take a look at what graduation looks like now at one high school in the town of Bradley. One graduate complete in cap, gown, and face mask, but alone as he receives his diploma. That is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. We leave you tonight with this salute to first responders. Drones putting on a show spelling out "Thank you, heroes." And we thank you for streaming with us.